I certainly want to welcome everybody for our third session. We're excited about this, and we're so glad to have you. Glad you have returned, and also for any new folks, we certainly want to welcome you. I want to just mention the facilitators and the partners in these discussions want to certainly thank you for your feedback on the first two sessions. You've been sharing the impact these sessions have been having on you, sharing things that you, in a lot of cases, that you never realized before. And that's a good thing. You've also shared some of your concerns. And one of the things that really kind of stands out in terms of some of the concerns that you've shared is that going through 12 years of schooling, and even sometimes even to college, and not being taught the history and the socio-political realities of the various racial and ethnic groups that live in our country. That needs to change. And here is something that Cal Ripken Foundation, he's a professor at Harvard Kennedy School, something that he wrote. So I'm gonna, if I can, bring this up on the screen for you to, okay, am I doing this right? Can you see the screen? Oh, okay, wait a minute. Okay, take just a moment and read what colleague Gabran Muhammad wrote. I'll give you just a few moments to read. Okay, and I will put this in the resource list in case you didn't get to read all the way through it. It's something that you can have and share with others. One of my colleagues, Asa Hilliard, has often made this statement, and so I want to bring this up. Multicultural competence is not merely a fairness issue. Multicultural competence is a prerequisite for professional competence. So basically what he's saying is, if you don't have multicultural competence, you're not professionally competent. And I think that is key. So another concern from the last session, I'm gonna get out of this share, okay, was that not enough time was spent on the issues of racism in the schools. And of course, we know that in 2 hours, it's hard to do justice to any of the issues that have existed for centuries. But the beautiful thing that happened in talking to a lot of you is, number one, you're concerned, but also that by being concerned, it led to some very creative ideas that you had about things and ways in which things could change. So I've asked you to write those ideas down, submit them to me so that they can be shared with all of us and we can benefit from those ideas. So don't hesitate to write your ideas down. That is part of this deliberative dialogue process, being open to listening, reflecting, examining our own thoughts and beliefs, and coming up with ideas to resolve issues. We are here because we care. We are here because we don't like hurtful and oppressive things that are happening. We're here because there is so much that perhaps hasn't been learned, and we're open to learning more and grasping these ideas. We're here because we are concerned and so I want to encourage you, when your mind starts flooding with all these different creative ideas, hold on to those, share them. That's extremely important, and we're going to be talking more about this next week. So at this time, I would like to introduce our guests. We have Sheriff Matt Lutz and Chief of Police Tony Curry, and we have several others, Phil Michael, Chris Mary. I don't know, am I leaving somebody else out? I want you to take a few moments and introduce yourself. So whoever wants to start, just tell us who you are and say something about.
You want to start, Chief?
Well, I can start. It's no problem. I don't have a problem talking. Well, good evening, everyone, and thanks for inviting me and my staff to join you. My staff, the people with me tonight are the Detective Sergeant Phil Michaels, Captains Chris Phipps, and Scott Comstock. You know, we have all been officers here at the Zanesville Police Department for several years. I have lived in the Zanesville community for the majority of my life. I have been here at the department about almost 30 years. And, you know, I currently reside in the Zanesville area, and I've raised 4 kids and have 4 grandchildren. So my life is busy, not only as a police chief, but as a father, grandfather, and husband.
Thank you, Tony. Someone else, Matt?
Yeah, great. Matt Lutz, Sheriff, and currently finishing up my 12th year as Sheriff, and I'll have 32 years of service all here at between the Sheriff's Office and South Zanesville Police Department. And with me tonight is Chris Mary, Sergeant Chris Mary. He is my supervisor of my 11-man school resource officer program. Chris is working on 18 years in law enforcement. And then also with me is Captain Jeff Lecoq, who is in charge of my road division and basically my right-hand guy here at the Sheriff's Office. And he's working on about 34 or 35 years total, I think it is, here at the county. So we're glad to be here tonight, and looking forward to engaging in conversation. And as Tony said, I've spent my whole life here. I was born in Zanesville, live in Philo. I got 2 children. I'm a new grandpa, just about 2 weeks and 2 days. So looking forward to getting into that and asking Chief Curry all the hints of being a grandpa. And so we're really enjoy working in law enforcement here. And we're very, very lucky to live in the community that we do, to have the support that we do. So we appreciate the invitation tonight.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Matt. Anyone else? Let me just share a little bit about the procedure that we're going to use this evening, and the rest of the officers will have an opportunity in the breakout sessions to talk. Basically, what we're going to do is take a few moments, maybe 30 to 40 minutes, and talk about or respond to questions and talk a little bit with 4 facilitators. Our facilitators are Tony Mail, Danielle Gregory, and Amy White. I don't see her right now, but myself. So we will talk with you for a little while, ask questions. Then we're going to go into breakout sessions, and where participants will be able to listen, share their experiences, their thoughts, and as well as ask questions. So the facilitators will be asking some questions, but I'd kind of like to start off our discussion with a question that certainly is very prominent on our minds. And we've had so much going on these past few months between police and protesters. And the question is, what's your understanding of the relationship between police, law enforcement, and people of color, particularly African Americans? In other words, why are the protests? What's your understanding of these protests taking place? And anyone can jump in.
Well, Anita, I'll jump in real quick since I found the unmute button before the chief did there. So the rallies, the protests have been in the city that we've had, and we're very fortunate, and I think just to have had those protests and rallies and not had any major issues. I know we've worked with Chief Curry and Mayor Mason to provide whatever resources we could to them. Obviously we recognize the need and the desire to voice those concerns. And I think, from a law enforcement standpoint, we want to make sure those voices and those concerns are heard. And we want to make sure that everybody has the right to do that. And as I said, we are very lucky here, very fortunate. I feel in my 12 years as sheriff that we've had a great relationship in this community and had a lot of support and haven't had any of the troubles that you see in some of the bigger cities or other cities. And so was very, I guess maybe relieved when we had the events downtown and we're just was really glad that we could participate with the city and provide whatever resources they needed.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else to address that question?
Anita, can I ask a follow-up question?
Yes, go ahead, Tony.
Well, as you know, Sheriff Lutz, I live in Morgan County, and we had a small protest out to Chester Hill. And when we did, our sheriff marched with us and actually spoke at the event. Did you get a chance to do it as well?
No, Tony, I did not. I was not asked to be there. I had talked to Chief Curry on the first event. He stated he had something scheduled and couldn't be there. And so, it's a little bit different for me this year because it's an election year and everything I do is scrutinized. And so the last thing I wanted to do was make that a political thing for myself. So in talking with Chief Curry and Mayor Mason, the only thing they requested really from me was to have a couple cars in the area in case they needed anything. And obviously we did whatever we needed to do for that. So yeah, I did not make it down. The second one, I believe I had something already scheduled and couldn't make it down there.
Well, and again, I know it's political. Would you mind mentioning your stance in regards to the movement, if you will, throughout the United States, and especially in Muskingum County?
As far as the protests?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
The movement as a whole, yeah.
Oh, I mean, like I said, we fully support that. The right to voice what's going on. Obviously, nobody in law enforcement that I know of supports what happened to Mr. Floyd. Nobody wants to see that happen. When those things do happen, with all the social media it's thrust into the spotlight, and we want our citizens to be safe no matter what color they are. And I think that's the job that we start out to do every day. And so, like, as I said earlier, we will do whatever we can to fully support anybody that wants to have their constitutional right to be able to rally and to express their freedoms and their concerns.
Okay.
All right, that's not quite a question.
Do you think that's being done in terms of people feeling supported and people being able to go to the police and address their concerns in the community
I'm sorry, was you asking me, Nita?
Well, either you or Tony or any of the other officers.
Oh, can you
You
repeat
feel-
that question? Because I wasn't sure what you asked.
Do you feel that that is being done in terms of being supportive to all the people in the community? Do you feel like people really feel that and believe that?
So you're asking me if I feel that people, any person or people of color can come and get support from us?
Yes.
100%. We have, I believe, a great community that we know a lot of people here. You know, Matt and I have been around here for 30 years, so to say that we don't know a lot of people would be foolish. I know people, you know, of color. I know a lot of white people. I just know people that's in the community active. But I don't. We've never turned anyone away. You know, we try to work with everyone. When Muskingum County or Zanesville had the rallies, the people that kind of spearheaded that, you know, reached out to me personally, and so, you know, I knew them one-on-one. I did not know the one young man, but I knew who he was related to. So I don't know that we've ever turned anyone away. I wouldn't think that we've ever turned anyone away.
I guess I was just wondering if you were aware of any complaints or concerns.
Of what kind of complaint?
People of color in the community. Are you aware of any?
Not that I know of, no.
Anita, and I'll just chime in on that one. I mean, I'm sure that there's people out there that have different thoughts with that based on what they see on social media. As Tony said, we like to think that we're handling every complaint we get. However, you know, I'm not naive enough to not know that there's going to be some folks that don't call us or don't report those things because they don't think anything will be done. And obviously, we don't want that. I know the chief doesn't want that. You know, we try to handle every call we get 110%. And you know, as we've talked about around here, we've been monitoring, you know, everything that we do when these things come up. And can things always get better? Sure. And we're always willing to listen and evaluate and do things better if we can do those things better. But I think a lot of issues we run into is where somebody may not be feeling that they was treated fairly, and then we don't hear about it, so we can't fix it. But to answer, I think where you were going with that is I don't personally, and again, when we start talking about the numbers of people of color that live in the city versus live in the county, you know, obviously we may not get as many calls for that, but you know, obviously we want to know if somebody's dissatisfied with our service.
Sheriff, I had a follow-up question. You're familiar with Franklin County recently hiring a director of diversity, equity, and inclusion. Has your sheriff's department ever thought about doing something similar? And also, before you answer that, we've been discussing in this group about the phenomena of mirror image and how you have to be representative of your community, not just in regards to sheriff's office and any organization, higher education, what have you. Would you be willing to tell us how many deputies or staff that you have of color or African American?
Yeah, sure. So first question is, I am aware of Dallas, who's the sheriff of Franklin County, know him very well, of hiring somebody in that capacity. You know, obviously my budget comes from the commissioners, mm-hmm. and we would have to have that, you know, authorized to add a position like that. I think anytime, you know, you're adding a new position or creating a position, you know, to be fair to the taxpayers of this county, I think you have to have statistics, and data to back you up on why you need those positions. And so I would not be opposed to a position like that if the commissioners and myself and our community felt that it was needed, and we would address that if we thought it was. The second part of your question, I currently have 3 individuals of color that work here at the sheriff's office. I have John Howe, who is a road deputy who works as a school resource officer at the Mideast Career Center. I have Corrections Officer Hawkins. He's in the academy and works in our jail. He's waiting to take a test to come out of the academy, and we feel very strongly that he is going to pass that and be a very good deputy for us. We are very glad to have him. And then I can't think of my third one. She works in central control, and I can picture her face, but maybe Jeff or Chris will Annette Sowers. So Annette works in our central control, and that's in the jail, and she runs all the jail doors and controls the public coming into the jail facility.
Well, many years ago when I went to the police academy and of course passed the exam, the only diversity class, if you will, we had was Terry Newman, former Terry Newman. It was a great class, but as a person of color, I felt like we needed more diversity training, and that's back in 2000. What's your opinion on that? Do you think OPATA needs to change some? And I'm not, when I speak of diversity, it's just not racial. It's ableism, sexism, and so on and so forth. Do you think officers need, and mental health awareness, of course, do you think they need more training such as that?
Yeah, I think, as Sergeant Mary and I was talking about it the other day, we are always looking and evaluating our training. And I think OPATA does a pretty good job with that too. And yeah, I think any kind of training that we can get for our officers, it's always going to be better. Again, you get back into, just like you do with the medical profession and the school teacher profession, how much training can you give on somebody to say they're actually qualified to get. So I know OPATA has done some e-OPATA on the computer, and they've made some of those cultural diversity programs available for guys to take. We've had certified training each year that we're required to take and get some of that training. We do a jail academy, a corrections academy that Terry Newman was involved in. Captain Dave Susi runs that for me now. We do some cultural diversity training in that. I'm one of the organizers of our CIT training, the de-escalation training, and deals with mental illness. That we've probably going to have the biggest amount of people in that class this year as we've had over probably the last 10, I think, that we've done that. So, we are constantly monitoring that, and we're always looking for the best training possible for our people.
Well, and I would extend my offer. I'm assuming Nita and the other co-facilitators would agree that we would be willing to offer some training in unconscious bias awareness, race issues, and so on and so forth if you would need it.
Great. Appreciate the offer.
If I could jump
You had a
Sheriff for a second.
Oh.
Sheriff, I could jump in.
Yes.
No, Sheriff, I was just going to jump in and say that, as training coordinator at our office, when something like this happens in the public, it kind of shines the spotlight on it. But this type of training and these type of things never leave my spotlight. So we're constantly looking, constantly trying to stay on the cutting edge to keep our guys and gals up to date and going on that. We exchange contact information. I'd be glad to listen to anything you had suggested.
Okay.
Hi, Tony.
You had a question.
Jeff Rico from the Sheriff's Office. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah, I was just going to add, I'm one of the presenters on our CIT program and have been for the last 11 or 12 years. And the turnout for that every year just keeps getting bigger. This year, we're probably going to have 35 to 40 officers involved. And also Morgan County is involved in that every year. And we have even talked about coming to Morgan County to host an outreach on that 40-hour block. And in that block, we get into things such as the de-escalation skills, recognizing some of the signs and symptoms of a person in a mental crisis or a physical crisis. If you have an autistic person, somebody with a traumatic brain injury, things along those lines. So sure, I mean, it just, we want to keep getting better at it every year. OPATA, I know, keeps expanding some of those hours every year.
And I want
Could you say what CIT is, so for people who may not know?
CIT is crisis intervention training.
And I can attest to this. We're involved with the CIT training and the the officers do a very good job in terms of recruiting. I've been in this longer than both Sheriff and Tony for 45 years. You guys were kids, and but it used to be that when people with mental illness were they were called for those cases, people were arrested, would go to jail and be prosecuted, and with this training now they often contact the mental health folks. They end up getting treatment rather than the criminal adjudication. So very excellent work, and the officers are very sensitive to people with mental illness. I had a question, Matt and Tony, in terms of recruiting officers in the interview process. Do you screen people who might be at risk for whatever dynamic might create an issue as it relates to race and discrimination? Is there any screening that happens on the front end?
We do some, James, we do a psychological testing. We do a pretty extensive background investigation. You know, we do a lot of talking, and the process is about a year for us, just to go from testing to hire dates.
And James, I didn't think you was past 35 years old, so I don't think you could be there that long. But you know, we technically traditionally have not done a lot of psychological testing when being hired here, and that is definitely something that we have talked about. You know, we have current employees that sometimes have to go to a fitness for duty test. That's sometimes physically, that's sometimes mentally, to be cleared to come back to work. And I think that's something that we are addressing, of kind of maybe talking about to see if we can't add to that as far as for some of those things goes. As far as finding out if they're racist or anything like that, I agree with Tony. We do a pretty extensive background. We lean very heavily on two programs that we're very lucky to have in our county. Of course, Zane State actually hosts one of the Ohio Peace Officer Training Academies. So the people that are coming to work for us that get police certificates actually are being trained right here in the county. And even some of our more senior people teach at those academies. And we rely back on them on how these people are acting in those classes, how they're handling themselves, and how they're doing in those classes. The other great thing that we rely on is Phil Snyder, who used to be a deputy sheriff here and worked with me, is now he is the head instructor of the criminal justice program at Mideast Career Center. They have a 2-year plan over there for law enforcement, and Phil does amazing job. In fact, I just hired 2 girls from his class over into our jail and our central control. And so, you know, those are the types of things that we do, you know, going back to cops to find out what these new folks are doing, how they're acting, and trying to find the best people that we can to put out on the street.
Yeah.
Let's get to you, because you
I've
had
been
some
trying to ask this
questions.
question for a while now. Matt, when you were speaking to Tony's question and Anita's about the movement itself, you kind of skirted the issue and said that, you know, you just supported people's right to speak, basically, which of course it's, you know, constitutional right. But I would like to hear, well, it's 2 parts from both the chief and Matt and any of the other officers that want to join in. Do you support the Black Lives Matters movement straight out? And the second part is, the number one finding that we've had from social science data is that more funding for police, more cops on the streets, does nothing to reduce crime. That you're trying to fix a structural problem with, you know, the end result. That the number one thing that works is education equity and a work infrastructure. So given that, do you support defunding to a certain extent, the police and putting them into social programs. I mean, when you talk about the CIT training, that's great, but you're not going to do as good a job if someone that, say, has a master's degree like Tony, or has a PhD like me, or something like that in, you know, handling mental health crises. So one, do you support the Black Lives Matter movement? And two, you know, are you for taking some funding from the police and putting into areas that seem to solve the structural problem?
So the first answer is yes, we do support the Black Lives Matter movement. And the second answer is no. I don't believe in any kind of defunding for law enforcement. And the reason is because my budget is the largest budget in the county. And we do not have extra people sitting around not doing anything, or in other words, wasting money. So the folks that we have right now, the job that we do, I feel we provide an excellent service to this county for what our budget is. And I think if we start taking money away from law enforcement to put other places, that there could be a lot of services that we provide to this county that would not be able to get done. I won't argue with you that I believe in education to the fullest. I think that, I think that the reason we have a lot of issues that we have today with humanity, regardless of color, is the lack of respect that kids are taught at a young age. And I believe we have younger kids having kids, and that respect is not taught. And that you can include racism with that. You can include respect for the police for that. A lot of things that the way we were taught isn't being taught. And I think that's the issue that we have. But, you may agree to find money from other places to put into the education portion of that. But I don't see us having a lot of funding that we could spare that would not take away services that we provide this county.
And the chief.
Okay, where do you want me to get started at?
Support Black Lives Matter movement.
So the movement that I have seen in the website that I have read a little about, I'm not sure that I know enough about it to support all of it. I do believe in the all lives matter. I believe Black Lives Matter. I don't know that, from what I've been told, some of the BLM movement itself may lean towards socialism. That's only what I've been told. So I would not support that part of it. The defunding of the police, absolutely not. I would not support that. I do not believe that's where we need to be going. I don't believe we need less officers on the street. I think we need more officers on the street. Here in Zanesville and Muskingum County, we have a good number of police officers. We are at a good number now. But every year our numbers go up. Our crime rate goes up, and incidents go up. So I think we manage well here. I don't think that some of the problems that you may be talking about are here in Muskingum County. If they are, they're very minute. I think big cities like Columbus, Minneapolis, San Francisco, Chicago, they have far more problems than we ever had. I think we're a small community and a good community, and we get along well with everybody. And, as the sheriff has indicated, there are times when people are not going to like us. They don't like our decisions. But for overall, we have very, very good officers, and we manage well with what we have. I hope that answers your question, Amy.
Yeah.
I actually have a couple of questions. Hi, I'm Danielle Gregory. I'm Director of Diversity, Access, and Inclusion at Muskingum University, and also one of the facilitators for this evening. So one thing I just want to acknowledge is that racism in all its aspects, we are dealing with a structural issue, right? And so I think that to the point of we are having young people who are not being taught respect and those kinds of things are absolutely true. I don't think that is comparable to the issue of racism. And I would never regardless of how large or small, ever described the issue of structural racism as minute. But my question lies in given the Black Lives Matter movement, well, my first question, given the Black Lives Matter movement and how heavily it does involve law enforcement, whether it be here in Muskingum County or nationwide, at what point do you feel that it is your responsibility to educate yourself on the movement in its entirety as a law enforcement officer?
Is that directed to me?
Yes, or any.
We continue to have ongoing education. We have continuing education all the time. So yes, it is important for us as administrators to stay up on current topics. We do the best we can do. We don't have anybody here that's facilitating to us, telling us exactly what we need to do all the time. So a lot of this is we have to go out and do it ourselves. In the short amount of time in the past couple of months, I have read up a little bit on the Black Lives Matter movement and kind of watched what was happening and try to learn from what people are doing. So that's probably the best I can answer that for you.
Thank you. If there's no one else that wanted to jump in, I do have a second part of that question. Oh,
part of that, just quickly, Doctor, is who you read and who you're studying as defining the movement, because, and you might speak to that. There are different points of view about the movement, are there not?
Absolutely.
Yes, yes.
Absolutely. And we have some resources, actually. I've sent out some resources to the library that should already, I believe, be placed on the library's website regarding podcasts to listen to, people to follow on social media, books you can read regarding not just racism and allyship, but the actual Black Lives Matter movement itself, because there are various points of view. I just asked that question because as law enforcement and as someone who is enforcing the law in our area, to hear you say, well, I'm not really sure what it's about was a little alarming to me, because I would want our law enforcement to kind of have some type of understanding of what it is and where they stand on whatever side of it, because there will be issues. There are issues that I'm aware of, and I've only lived in Zanesville for a year, of these topics and of individuals having differing opinions. And I believe there will only be a matter of time until it does escalate. And so I believe it's important for us as citizens of Zanesville and Muskingum County and our law enforcement and administrators of our area to all kind of be abreast of what is happening and what that means for us as a community.
And this is Tony, I wanted to get to some of the questions on chat really quickly. One of them is, have either the chief or the sheriff reached out to anyone? And I'm sorry, I just lost it. Have the chief or the sheriff reached out to anyone in the African-American community to determine what local problems they may perceive in police, community relations, or other aspects of the justice system?
Tony, I'll answer that question first. I mean, no, I have not actively seeked out anybody in our community. I would say this. I would echo what Tony said earlier about, we base a lot of what we do on current trends, complaints that we're getting, and problems that we see in our community. For example, if we have a bunch of break-ins in a certain area, we step up enforcement in that area. And so as things come into us, we are constantly evaluating issues in our community, staying abreast of issues in our community, and we take appropriate action and adjust our activity and our actions for that. I'm not going to remember some names right now, but I've routinely attended the NAACP banquet. I go to a lot of different things with James McDonald. I talk to Mr. Newman every once in a while. There's a couple of ministers that when I run into, I talk to, and I feel that I have a pretty good relationship with them, that if there was a significant problem or something that we were doing wrong or something that we were missing, I think that word would get back to me in some form or fashion. I'm not trying to say that maybe I shouldn't be out talking to those folks, but the numbers don't support the criteria or the data that we have an issue here. And again, we have a lot of things that we're tasked to deal with, and we have to put resources in the spots where we need that stuff. And again, I think that's the evolution of us evaluating that and staying on top of that and making sure we're doing what we should be doing. And yeah, I mean, we're always looking to make things better. I mean, Tony and I both, working with our drug unit and handling all the investigations that we do, we're always trying to provide our people with the best possible things they need to get the job done. And if there's something out there that we can be doing, I met with a young man, and his name escapes me. I got it on my phone. We had probably a half an hour, 45-minute conversation in my office about things going on right after this incident happened. And he asked me about whether I would attend a church of color to talk about those things. And I said, name the day and time. I have never refused to go out into the public. I'm out in the public all the time. I've been to the Civic League on Jackson Street to support their benefits and their stuff. And so I feel really good about my relationship with the majority of the community. And I really feel that if we had a significant problem, or if we would get a significant problem, that I would get that word, or I would, attempt to make sure that we're taking care of those things.
I have a question that relates to one I just saw in chat. You say that, most of your awareness of problems, and this is for any of the officers, come from people reporting. Well, 65%, we talk numbers for problems, 65% of Black Americans in Ohio feel that they've been unfairly targeted by law enforcement because of race. Often the Black community does not reach out for fear that they won't be understood. And I mean, if we look at the numbers, this is supported. 1 in 3 Black men will end up in prison at some time in their life. That's compared to 1 in 17 white men. 1 in 18 Black women will end up in prison compared to 1 in 111 white women. The Ohio prison population is 44.7% Black, but we have less than 10% of the general population is Black in Ohio. So that seems to be a great bias. So if we just go by who's calling in, we're not going to see the problems, but the numbers seem to indicate them. What do you think can be done about this?
Well, Amy, I appreciate that. I know Tony probably wants to jump in, but I'll go real quick. I appreciate that. And I don't know that I have an answer for the state of Ohio. I did some numbers myself. And in 2018 and 2019, these were the felony cases at the sheriff's office. And the African-American percentage was 11% out of 100. That's how many African-Americans were charged with felonies, 11%. Actually, it was 11% almost on the nose. And then when you start looking at traffic stops, for example, and warnings, we did for 2020 so far, we have done 1,702 tickets. The folks that of color that have received that ticket is 8.6%. When you start talking about criminal cases, we had 24 total criminal cases. There was 3 that were persons of color. Traffic stops, 611. And I believe, persons of color was 42 out of, actually it was 57 out of 611. So I understand the numbers from an Ohio point of view, but I think where Tony had mentioned this before, the numbers in our county and city are much, much lower than that. And so again, I get your point about people not calling in, but I want you to understand that people of color are not the only ones afraid to call in. We get a tremendous amount of domestic violence victims, white or persons of color, that are afraid to call in, that go unreported to us. And without that report coming to us, that's very hard for us to take action. That's why you'll hear me say a lot about see something, say something. And that was a coin that Dick Gus, the late Dick Gus out of South Zanesville, kind of back in 07, 08 kind of started. And, so we are actively looking for any kind of criminal activity, and we will respond and react to that criminal activity. But if it's not being reported to us, it's going to be more difficult for us to rectify that situation.
In Muskingum County, the ratio is there are about 4% African Americans in the county.
3.8, James. 3.8.
Right. And in the county, it's about 11, 12. I mean, in the city, it's
Right.
about 11, 12%.
So it's
African
still
American.
more likely, not as much as statewide, but still significantly more likely.
It's 11 to 12% African American in the city. Sheriff, are those people who you pick up, you're talking city and county?
Yeah, that could be, James, because we get the, well, no, it'd be basically the felony cases that my detective bureau handled. That wouldn't be the ones that Tony's guys handled as
Okay.
felonies.
Okay.
Yeah.
So okay. So
Luckily,
yeah,
he may have some numbers too.
it's proportionate though.
Mhm.
Tony do you have the percentage of African Americans that are incarcerated that run through your jails? Do you know those numbers in terms of race?
I don't have that number, no.
Okay.
I do not have that number either, but that number would be significantly lower. I wouldn't think we had a number higher than 10%.
Yeah.
Tony, could you find those numbers for us so we can report to the members of the groups?
That would be
I
great.
cannot before the end of this evening, but I could.
No, that's fine. That's fine.
Yes.
Yeah.
I do have some numbers, Amy, just like the sheriff, and I believe our numbers. So I do not have a computer system that just generates this. We have to have secretaries kind of generate this, look through past reports and code signals. So in 2017, I had 1,622 traffic stops. Out of them, and we just were able to count how many people received citations. Out of that, there was, in 2017, there was 423 whites were ticketed to 88 black. In 2018, we had 2,040 citations. 532 were white, 111 were black, or traffic stops. And then in 2018, the same, it was significantly lower, 783 white people were ticketed to 152 black. We've had use of forces. We had 57 use of forces in 2017. We had 29 white males, 11 black males. We had 13 white female to 3 black female. In 2018, I had 76 reported uses of force. That was 40 white males were reported, 13 black males, 17 white female, and 2 black female. And then 2019, we had 108 uses of force, with 68 of them being white male, 20 being black male, 16 being white female, and 3 being black female.
It's still pretty.
One of the
And
issues too. one of the
Amy,
issues-
I'll add something to that too that I kind of forgot about. We wrote 611 tickets, but we wrote 1,067 warnings. So we wrote almost double the warnings. And when you start talking about persons of color with warnings, we were at 85, 86, and we only wrote 57 tickets. So again, those numbers are very low compared to what you had from the state of Ohio.
Right.
Yeah, it's still disproportionate. I think it was at the 2008, the use of force, 24 black men, 24 white men, 11 black men. That's half for a population that's only 2.8%.
Amy, we're talking about 1,586 arrests.
I know, but I was looking at that use of force one.
In our use of force is anything that we put our hands on you. If we grab you and put handcuffs on you, they will write up a use of force. So if we've touched you, they get a use of force. That doesn't mean that somebody physically got hurt.
Oh, yeah, no, I understand that. Yeah.
And Tony, you didn't get a chance earlier to answer the question from the chat room about community presence and reaching out to communities of color. Could you address that?
So I think the question was posed to the sheriff. Have we ever reached out to somebody of color?
Well, the community of color to discuss their I don't know, their views on law enforcement and so on and so forth. Or sometimes, as somebody mentioned, Keisha Norris mentioned, just to develop trust toward law enforcement, because you're both real, and well, you both should realize that throughout history there has been a distrust in law enforcement amongst African American way back to slavery. So
well, I think that's true. I think that's true, Tony, with everyone. Nobody seems to trust us when we get behind you in a marked patrol car. Everybody tightens up, whether you're white or black. But I do want to say that do I have conversations with people of color of concern? Yes, I do. I reach out to Dr. Michael Bullock when I have questions. He's answered a lot of my questions. We have a past captain, Bob Branford. I have relied on some answers from him. So I have questions from time to time. We are very active in our community. I could run down a list of things that we all do. But one of the best things that we've done, a couple of things. We run a Citizens Academy in 2019. And I tried to put diversity throughout that whole entire program. We were asking 16 people. So we broke it down to, we wanted religious leaders. We wanted educators. We wanted minority. We wanted politicians. And we did that. And it was very, very eye-awakening for all of us involved. We built great working relationships out of that class. And we still today talk to those people that were in that training. I have a young officer that came to me in early 2019, late 2019, early 2020, that asked that he wanted to work with children that were the bad of the bad. And we'll leave it at that. It didn't matter what race, but he wanted kids that were kind of getting left behind. So we reached out with Big Brothers, Big Sisters. We were able to work with our officers on the street. And during that time, the officers would find kids that we thought we could help and we could mentor. And we didn't care whether they were white or black. As the program proceeded, I wanted to make sure that every kid and what came in there felt the same as every other kid. So we reached out to sponsors and people with money and asked them to help support us. And we wanted to make sure the kids all looked the same as far as dressing, and they all had the same thing. And then I started to reach out to people in the community to talk to these kids. These officers were talking to them, and I'm telling them what men should do. They were all boys, so we tried to teach them what men do from right and wrong, how they treat a woman, how they act in public, and how they behave and how they get educated. And as the class continued, I started to reach out to some of the community members, and I reached out to Dr. Bullock, and then I reached out to Prince Fields. Some of you may know Prince. He has a hair cutting place here. And I asked that I wanted to bring people that looked like some of the children that we had. And unfortunately, before we could get Prince in here, COVID hit us and we had to stop the program. We have continued to try to reach some of these children. We've lost a few of them, but we hope when we're able to, we'll get back together and we'll continue with that program. So that's just a couple of the things we do. You know, Captain Comstock's involved in Forever Dads. So we're trying to work with parents and fathers when they get out of prison to reintroduce them to families and to be able to be around their kids. And, you know, I could kind of go on and on with things we're involved with, but hopefully that answers your question, Tony.
And Tony, if I can real quick on the piggyback of that, we also, and Tony was part of this too, we were involved with the Cal Ripken Foundation with Big Brothers, Big Sisters. And when this thing first opened, we were only one of 3 law enforcement jurisdictions, I believe, in the United States that had that program that we provided officers to work with the kids. And of course, as he said about Scott and Forever Dads, we work with Restore Citizens Network for Muskingum County, the reentry program. We have them come into our jail. We're doing tablets now in our jail. We're working on putting programs on the tablets for our inmates to be able to complete programs and have information to go out with Forever Dads. And just like the Big Brothers Big Sisters charity auction, we're there every year trying to raise money for Big Brothers Big Sisters. So there is a lot of other involvement that we do behind the scenes that you can relay to your members that's never getting reported.
Thank you.
Do you see a lot of, I'm looking at one of the chat questions, do you see opportunity to do better in our community, particularly because of the trust issue? A lot of Black people do not trust the police because of the historical dynamics that have occurred.
Nita, you were broken up, but I think what you said was, yeah, I think there's always room for us to do better. We are always trying to better our offices. We're always trying to provide better for our employees, and we are constantly monitoring that on how we can be better.
I know we're going to be breaking soon, Anita, for our breakout sessions and everything. And I think this has been really fruitful and informational discussion. And I appreciate the information that you all have provided us thus far. And I just want to give everyone to know, all of our participants, that remember that this is a conversation series about race, right? So let us not shy away from the issue. We understand that there are issues in every aspect of life, right? In interactions, working with the community. But this particular series and today what we're here to talk about is about race. And I know that I know that race can be uncomfortable. And I know that in some of our previous conversations, the conversations have kind of got misdirected to other things outside of race, and race has gotten swept under the rug. But it's important that we do focus on race tonight, because it is a topic that needs to be discussed, and it is a topic that often gets swept under the rug because of people's uncomfortability. And the issues that we have with race today is no one's fault here in this room, right? No one that's attending this conversation. We're dealing with structural, institutional, and historical issues, but it's about our viewpoint on it and the way that we move forward with it. And so I think that Tony and Matt, when the participants are asking about the community and in the roles that you have with the community, I think the Big Brothers Big Sisters and the things that you mentioned are awesome. And I think that they're also asking about just the regular individuals of the community, right? Maybe not our business owners and our doctors of color, but our regular, 9-to-5 workers and people who live in the community, and do you have some type of relationship with them? And you may very well have. But I know that we just kind of want to keep that as the forefront as we break out tonight. And I just want to encourage everyone to keep talking. I think that this is great conversation. I think, and that we're learning some great things from our guests this evening.
Thank you, Danielle, for sharing that. Certainly, I think it's what you said was key in terms of reaching out and talking to just the everyday person. Some of the Black organizations in town, it's one thing, as she said, to talk to doctors and educators and so forth, but just other people in the community, I think it's real important. Another thing to think about in terms of discussion on defunding, there's a lot of feelings about funding going into militarized weapons and so forth, and do not need to be used in a community. And so I think those kind of thoughts and fears need to be discussed, because people are concerned about that, which contributes to the distrust of police. So there is this demand to use the fund for education, for medical issues, for mental health issues. We do want to let participants be able to discuss and talk. We're already at 7:30. So we're going to go ahead into our breakout room so that the participants will have an opportunity to share and to ask questions also.